Ladies and kinksters, there are so many myths and misconceptions when it comes to BDSM, and one of them will really, really, really shock you. We're going to talk about that and more. Let's fucking go. The very first myth. But it doesn't have to be.
I think the stereotype is that often my mind goes to like the dominatrix who's like hitting somebody until they bleed. It's very rough. The other person's in a lot of pain, when that's definitely not the case.
It doesn't have to be, yeah. And you have a personal story to tell. Your sister, your older sister, who cares very deeply about you and
She
just wanted
does.
the best for you. When she first found out that you were in a relationship with me and that we were into BDSM, she had an intervention with you.
Yeah, she was very like, this isn't okay. You shouldn't be doing this. I think part of it was also the age gap and that we weren't monogamous. But yeah, she was she had like a proper sit down chat with me and was like, I don't think this is good for you.
Yeah,
Why are you
BDSM is
doing this?
abusive, yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, what didn't help the case was that because we were a bit rougher than we maybe are now at the start, I did have bruises sometimes, which is unfortunately like inherently what happens sometimes. And I enjoyed that. I even liked getting bruises at the time. But obviously, to somebody who already has the idea that BDSM is abusive, that's definitely not helping the case.
And to be fair, you have significantly more bruises now from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
That's true.
Which is a type of martial art. So you are covered in bruises now. And now people assume that I'm abusing you when absolutely not. So let's also say the type of BDSM that we like to have these days is very gentle. It's very sensual. We're very kind to the women that we sleep with and date. We're very slow. We like to see them in pleasure. There's a strong misconception that BDSM can only be abusive or violent or giving and inflicting pain. It's like it really doesn't have to be that.
Yeah, no, it certainly doesn't. And obviously the acronym BDSM, part of that is sadomasochism. But it's definitely not something that we involve ourselves with much anymore. I've definitely become a softie over the last couple of years, and we use a lot more psychological play, and dominance rather than the physical pain aspect of it.
Yeah, and guys and girls, the way that I would think about BDSM is it's such a broad, vague term that covers like just so many different things. And if there's part of BDSM that you're not really into, like the pain or the rougher side of it, you don't have to do that. BDSM is this beautiful, big, open scope of different things you can do. If you're not into pain, don't do it.
I'm reading it.
And then the next. And some people do. Let's be very clear.
Absolutely, yeah.
But you'll get the same thing when you're just having normal sex or casual sex. You will find people who are mentally unstable. You'll find people who have trauma. And what we do is with some people who've had trauma, we still will go ahead and we'll just be very gentle and very slow and we'll talk to them and make sure that they understand that, we want them to have fun and make sure that we're not doing something that hurts them. One of the key core tenets of us when we do BDSM is we make sure that everybody is better off afterwards. And it's something that we talk about a lot on this channel. We would always encourage any of you who are going to try some BDSM stuff or some kinky sex to make sure that you and any partners that you play with are better off after the experience. So, you can kind of have that in your head. And then when you're in a position where you think maybe this person wouldn't be better off if we have sex, and we've had a few women like that, you just don't go ahead.
Yeah, and what we mean by when we say people who might not be better off from it are people who have had traumatic experiences and then are seeking out the more abusive, more rough, more degrading sort of BDSM that we're not even necessarily into anyway.
Yeah. And I've had quite a few experiences. I remember I had one girl in particular, who asked me to punch her. She literally said, "I want you to punch me." And I was like, "I don't want to punch her. Like, why am I punching you?" And she was like, "No, I really just want to be punched." And it didn't seem like that was healthy. Like, punching just doesn't seem sexual at all. That just seems like violent. And I've had some other girls request like similar things. We've had plenty of girls that say they're into knife play. And no judgment if you're into that, but that's just not something we're going to go anywhere near.
And it is a sort of thing with BDSM. It's not something where you you have to do everything. As you said before,
Correct.
you can pick and choose what you are and are not into. And even if your partner or the person that you're seeing is into one thing and you're not, you don't have to do that. You can just, or I don't like using the word should, but you probably should just do things that you're both into, not doing something because the other person wants it. And that goes for both the submissive and the dominant roles.
Yeah, and BDSM can also be healing or cathartic for a lot of people. So a lot of people, that if you guys and girls look up BDSM healing or trauma healing BDSM, a lot of people will sort of, let's say they've had some trauma in the past, maybe sexual or physical or something trauma, they can kind of rewrite the story by having a sexual experience that maybe involves a little bit of restraints or some BDSM or something, but in a loving, very gentle, kind way with someone that they deeply trust, and there's good communication and there's safe words and you're taking it slow and all of that kind of stuff. And they get to sort of rewrite the story and say, okay, like the thing that happened to me in the past, whatever that trauma might have been, that was just with that particular person, or that was an event that happened, but my body doesn't have to be in danger. Like I don't have to be in danger. I can do it in a, healthy, productive, healing way. So some people do healing, and we haven't actively sorted out, but there have been a couple of girls, like one in particular that I can think of, the first girl that we had like a proper relationship with, where she had sexual trauma. Nothing to do with BDSM, but she had sexual trauma. And we were able to, I think we were pretty kind to her, and she had points where she would sort of like need to stop, and we were just very gentle with that. But I think ultimately, or I know ultimately, her being with us in a sexual way with some BDSM was good for her.
Yeah, it helped her work through a few things and put herself in a vulnerable position, but then reteach herself that nothing bad has to happen.
Yeah.
You can be vulnerable, you can open yourself up, and you can have a good experience if you make sure you do it with the right people and talk about it and make sure you trust the people that you're with.
Yeah, and final thing we'll say here, if you're a guy who wants to start exploring BDSM, or if you're a woman who wants to start exploring it, you can seek out only partners who are mentally stable and don't have any trauma. Like, let's make that really fucking clear. I will say the vast majority of people that we have ever done BDSM with have been incredibly just like normal people who've just always had this side of themselves that are like, man, it would be so cool to try that. I would love to try being tied up. I watched 50 Shades of Grey and it seemed interesting. I'd like to try some stuff. I'd say we screen for that so unbelievably hard. And we've had quite a few girls who maybe had some mental instability, and we've just said like, hey, I don't think we want to continue with this. Like, we're not going to do it with you. And so you can screen only for people who are mentally stable. Let's make that very clear. And that's something that we like to do. We like only, or mostly only, healthy people at this point.
Yeah.
So the next misconception that comes. I haven't done it before, and I'm worried that I'll look silly if I try.
And I think because there is sometimes a stigma around like the BDSM community, and it's this big formal thing where you need to be in the in-group and there's gatekeeping and you have to know what you're doing. I think sometimes it can come across as very unapproachable.
Like intimidating.
But that's not at all how we address it.
Yeah, and most of the women that we have sex with and have BDSM sex with have no experience with BDSM. A lot of them have no experience with women. Quite a few of them have been virgins and they've never done anything. And so you absolutely don't need to be experienced. I myself, at some point, like, think about everyone who's good at something. At some point, they weren't good at that thing. Everybody who's an expert at something, at some point, they were a complete beginner. And so at some point, I had no idea about BDSM or sex toys or restraints or how to make a woman orgasm or any of that shit. At some point, I was a virgin, obviously.
Yeah.
But when I first started working on my sex life and having more sex, I didn't do any BDSM stuff. I was terrified of that shit. I was like, I can't do that. That's not me.
Yeah.
I had a very good friend who encouraged me a ton, and he was doing BDSM, and he was like, dude, it's not as complicated as you think. You don't have to be good at it. Stop putting this pressure on yourself that you have to be this amazing, smooth Casanova Dom who knows what he's doing. He was like, just try blindfolding her. Literally just try blindfolding the girl that you're seeing right now and just see what happens. And it took him probably 6 months of gently encouraging me before I was finally like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to try some stuff. And I just was honest and authentic and upfront with women. And I just said, like, look, I don't know what I'm doing. I've never done this before, but I'm just going to try some stuff. We'll try together. We will learn together. We can explore together. And I just started with a blindfold and a vibrator. I just bought a vibrator. You can buy the Magic Wand vibrator or really any decent vibrator. And you just tie her up and kind of edge her or tease her. Like get her close to orgasm. And then when she says, oh, I'm going to come, you take the vibrator away and you go, you're not allowed to come yet. And then you put it back on her. And you just keep doing that. Congratulations, that's BDSM.
And yeah, as you said, ultimately everybody needs to start somewhere, and you can just start really small, like with the example that you gave. And that also goes for both the dominant and the submissive roles, is that at some point, whether you're dominant, whether you're submissive, you are going to have to start somewhere. Obviously, it makes it easier if you maybe try your first time with somebody that has a little bit more experience, but it also works as well. And I know something that you coach your clients on is guys who haven't had much experience doing BDSM, who often end up meeting girls who also don't have much experience.
Yep.
And you both try and explore stuff together, and you start slow. You start with stuff that's very easy, very approachable, and then build up to trying more things. Ultimately, it's about building the confidence to try more things than anything else.
Yeah, for sure. And any submissive women that are listening, it's funny. A lot of guys will find this funny because the guys are thinking in their mind, if I'm going to be the dominant one, that means I have to do all the work. Right? And she just gets to enjoy it and do whatever I do. But so many of the women that we have slept with that are submissive, they put a lot of pressure on themselves that they have to do a good job and they have to perform. And it's...
Yet simultaneously have no clue what to do.
Yeah. And so if you are a submissive listening, if you're a submissive woman or you're a submissive guy and you're listening and you're thinking like, man, I have to do such a good job. Like I have to be good at this. No. Here's your cheat code. Literally just multiple times while you're having sex, say, what do you want me to do? How can I please you? What should I do next? Tell me what to do. Just say, tell me what to do 10 times during sex, and then you're doing the best job ever. We've had so many girls, especially the virgin girls that we have slept with, that are so worried about doing a good job, and they will constantly say, like, am I doing a good job? Like, what do you want me to do next? What should I do next? And we will actively say to them, like, you're doing such a good job by saying, what should I do next? Like, that's the perfect submissive. Literally, the perfect submissive is just someone who says, what do you want?
Yeah, just being proactive enough or having enough initiative to just ask counts for a hell of a lot.
Yeah. And as a submissive, it's very endearing if you say, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I want to do a good job for you. Like, being eager to please is one of the hottest things that you can ever do for your dominant, or for anyone really, not even BDSM, just normal sex. If you're just two vanilla normal partners having normal sex, just saying, how can I please you? That's hot as fuck. That's ridiculously hot.
And I think what it boils down to is actually just communication and asking the other person what they want so you can do a better job at pleasing them or just having a good time.
Absolutely.
Making sure that you both enjoy yourselves.
Absolutely. And the next misconception that comes up a lot, absolutely not true. It can be true in some cases. In certain dynamics, you as the dom might want to do all the work.
And I think for us personally, because we generally seek out more submissive girls who are less experienced, we tend to take the lead, be a bit more proactive and do more of the work. But that doesn't mean that that's always the case or always has to be the case.
Yeah, and there's two types of submissives. There's assertive submissive and there's passive submissive. And so the woman who's a passive, or the person who's a passive submissive, will sort of just, won't necessarily lay there, but they'll take a back seat. They'll say, I'm not in control. You can do whatever you want to me, and I'll just let it happen. And if I'm not happy with something, I'll say so. But like for the most part, I'm just going to be hands off and let you do whatever you want. That's passive submissive. There are also submissives who are assertive submissive. They can be like bratty girls, so they will actively tell you what they want you to do. Or they might try and get you really horny, or they might be the kind of girls who are like, I want to be a good girl for you. Like, they're basically telling you what they want. So they might even say during sex, fuck me harder, tie me up, like, make me squirt. Like,
oh yeah, it can be also more submissive, like through the act of begging, or asking for things in a more submissive way rather than an assertive way, but still ultimately asking and verbalizing what it is that they want.
Yeah, and so it's a very interesting dynamic that you get into, because another misconception that people have is very similar to this one, is that the dom is always in control. and the submissive is never in control. But the dynamic is a lot more interesting than that. When you actually get into BDSM and meet a few partners, you'll see that a lot of submissives have all the control, because they're the one that gets to say, hey, stop at any point, and you as the dom are going to stop. They're the one that can get you really horny. They're the one that's trying to get you all worked up and get you to lose control and just fuck the shit out of them. And they're the one that's being bratty sometimes. So they're taking the lead, but in a submissive way. It's a very subtle, I won't say passive, but it's not direct power. It's not like physically grabbing someone and forcing them to do something, but it is a form of power. It's a verbal power. And so, yeah, submissives can do a hell of a lot during sex. And if you're the type of dom who likes to do all the work, great, do that. Lots of women will love that. But if you like to have a bit more of like a push and pull, a bit more of a play going on, a bit more of like a dynamic, almost like a dance between the submissive and the dominant, then there are plenty of women out there who are submissive, but will actively tell you what they want you to do. Like they'll be like, please fuck me harder, please tie me up, please spank me, please do this. They will actively tell you what they want, even though you're the dominant one.
And ultimately, you can seek out whatever partner it is that you want. You can ask questions about what it is they actually want in the bedroom, how they want things to work, so you can find a partner that is compatible with you.
Or you can be a little bit more free-flowing, which is what we are. So I kind of, if I'm to categorize myself, and I don't like labels and I don't like categories, but if I was to categorize myself, I would say I am a facilitator or a pleasure giver. What that means is whatever dynamic the person or people that I'm with, whatever they like, I like to facilitate that. It brings me a lot of pleasure seeing someone else in pleasure. It brings me a lot of pleasure helping someone explore and like mentoring them and coaching them and all that. And so you can kind of be fluid if you want to. And when you meet a woman who's submissive but like assertive and very verbal about what she wants, you can kind of just go with the flow. And then when you meet a woman who's a little bit more quiet and a little bit more reserved, okay, I will take over now. I will do everything, and I will obviously make sure you're having fun, but I will take the lead on a massive scale.
And I think there is a benefit to not putting yourself in a box, or the partner that you want in a box, and saying, I only want this. This is the only thing that I want. Because I think through the years of us playing and exploring, we've actually found that we've been surprised by the things that we like.
Yeah.
Things that we weren't necessarily sure that we would enjoy, but then actually having tried them with somebody different or just exploring between ourselves, it's actually a hell of a lot of fun to change things up. Even if you lean towards one thing more of the time, it's fun every now and then to try something different.
Absolutely. The next absolute codswallop.
Codswallop, I haven't heard that
word back
maybe
from the
ever.
Fucking 1600s. Yeah, absolute BS. Trust, communication, intimacy, and all of that are a big part of BDSM, or can be a big part of BDSM, especially the kind of relationships that we have with women. We care about them a lot. We will go on road trips with them. We spend time with them. We ask about, their week and their day. We're very gentle and loving with them. We make sure they're having fun. We give them a lot of pleasure. We ask about their life. Yeah.
It's in no way clinical, and I think it's just about how you choose to actually engage in BDSM and how you have sex. And often I find that it's actually a more intimate, more emotional experience, because it requires you being so vulnerable and opening yourself up a lot more, letting somebody else take control or controlling somebody else. I find that when you're exploring that and playing with those dynamics, it requires so much more emotionality and connection, and it becomes a more intimate experience than maybe vanilla sex.
And you talk more. With BDSM, one of the reasons we like BDSM so much, and the dynamics that we have with the women that we sleep with, is there's a lot more communication, and there's a lot more of a feeling of like we're on the same team, because you have to communicate, right? If you're going to do this kind of kinky sex, you have to talk about it. Like, you're not just going to, in the middle of sex, start spanking her with a paddle or something. You usually like talk about it. You don't just like get out the handcuffs. I mean, you can, but for the most part, we like to, and we recommend that you talk about it first. You don't have to have a massive conversation, but you just have to say, I've got handcuffs. Do you want to play with them? And she'll be like, oh, okay. And then you get into it. So because there's more communication, and there's obviously more communication during it, and because what you're doing has the potential to hurt someone, and that isn't something that you should sit there and stress about, but like, if you are spanking or if you are tying someone up, it's slightly more risk-taking than just normal vanilla sex. Not a lot, but just a little bit. because of that, you're acutely aware of that, and so are they. And so there's more trust there. There's more communication there. There's more like checking to make sure the other person is having fun than I think compared to what happens in normal vanilla sex. Or I think often in vanilla sex, people just get lost in themselves in their own head, and they're just busy thrusting and
Yeah, it's almost like you're both just getting off.
yeah. Whereas BDSM is a lot more of a dance between two people, or in our case, like 3 or 4 people. It's more of a exploration of the other person and the other human being, and more of a connection. So I agree 100% with you. I think the connection is actually stronger. Ever since I started BDSM, I have felt a lot more intimate and sensual and closer. And I feel like I have explored parts of the partners that I've been with that I wouldn't have explored if we just had vanilla sex.
And I think even more so because the type of BDSM that we engage in is often more gentle, more psychological, almost more loving at times. I think that actually brings out a more intimate side in what we do, because it's not it's very rarely rough. It's not abusive. There's very little like degradation or humiliation. It's then even more so like quite an intimate, gentle, loving experience that's very like emotionally charged.
For sure. The next one. This one is so common. So many people think that BDSM can only be about pain, and if I don't like pain, well, I guess I can't do BDSM then, right? Because they're going to expect me to spank them, and I don't want to do that.
And I don't get turned on if someone hits me, so like I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, even this wasn't the case when we first met, almost 5 years ago now. And I was a lot more into the idea of pain and things being rough. But right now, I'm a big sook. And I think I mentioned this earlier at the start of the video, but I don't really enjoy pain anymore. I don't like it when you're too rough. I don't like it when you spank me too hard. It's just not something that I enjoy anymore. I think because we've done a lot more of the sensual, loving, psychological side of BDSM, I enjoy that a hell of a lot more now.
Yeah, and I don't like pain. I like inflicting pain if I can see that she really loves it. But my limit is a lot lower than it used to be, as in how much pain I can inflict. Now, when I inflict pain, it's more like a sensory thing. Like, does this feel good? It's also more naughty. Like, I will spank as part of a discipline thing of like, you've been bad, so I have to spank you. And then or the other girl is giggling during that. It's more fun as an exploration of pain, but we don't really like pain anymore. Yeah, we don't. Like, we don't hurt each other. We don't bruise each other anymore. And to be fair, we only did that stuff for like a year or so. And even then, I'm not sure that I was ever massively into it. Little bits and pieces. But yeah, the point is that you absolutely don't have to get anywhere near pain or spanking or even rough. A lot of girls too, but a lot of guys have come to me and said, I really want to be into more like gentle, almost like tantric, but loving types of sex. And I worry that means I'm not a man, or I'm not an alpha male, or I'm not good enough, or women won't like it. It's like, first of all, are you fucking kidding me? Do you know how many women would love for you to just be gentle and loving and sensual and tantric and like blow her mind with gentle, slow building orgasms? Like, any women listening right now, leave a comment if that sounds good to you. If you're like, are you kidding me? Like, I would love if a guy just explored my body for an hour in a gentle way. Like,
slow and sensual. Like, slow and sensual doesn't equate to boring.
Yeah.
It can often be more interesting because it's more exploratory and also means more pleasure.
Yeah.
And I think that the portrayal of BDSM, especially in just like very surface level, like pop culture stuff, often it's like the end of a joke where like it's this like very abusive, caricatured version of BDSM where, as I mentioned at the start of the video, there's a lot of pain. It's very aggressive. It's like the highest level of like the most intense BDSM you could possibly think of.
Yeah, it's a caricature of BDSM for sure. It's one type of BDSM, we can say it like that.
Yeah, and if you're into more rough sex or BDSM and pain, there's nothing wrong with that as long as you're seeking out a partner that also wants that sort of stuff, because that's definitely a thing for some people.
Yeah, for sure.
And physiologically, when you kind of mix pleasure and pain, that can intensify the feelings that are happening. But it's not for everyone, and if it's not your thing, you can still engage in BDSM.
Yeah, again, to be very clear, BDSM is this, like, there's a wide open gamut of all the things that you can try in BDSM. You know, you can have role play, you can have fun, you can mentor the other person, you can do like tantric, which really just means slow, gentle sex. You can tease them, you can edge them, you can, if I didn't already say this, like role play. You can do all that sort of stuff. Toys, vibrators, like blindfolds, just being kinky, having a sexual bucket list, exploring with multiple partners like we do, like having threesomes and foursomes, all of that kind of stuff. There's so many different aspects of BDSM or kinky sex in general, and pain can just, if you're not into it, just don't introduce that into the bedroom. No one's forcing you, which leads nicely into the next one. In other words, people they don't really want to do it, but they're just going along with BDSM. Especially people worry about that with submissives. They're like, no real woman would ever let someone spank her or call her dirty names or, fuck her mouth or any of that kind of stuff. A real woman wouldn't do that. I wouldn't want the mother of my children doing that stuff. Like, she's a slut. There's that kind of like...
Yeah, thank you 50 Shades of Grey for like the, I guess, most popularized portrayal of BDSM, basically being a story about a chick that doesn't actually want it and a guy that kind of just forces her into it, and it's kind of hot because he's rich. So
that is kind of the plot of 50 Shades of Grey.
She doesn't want it.
Yeah, it's like there are lots of times where she's like, I don't really like this, I just want to have vanilla sex, and he's like, bad luck. Like, you just have to fucking do it. There's even a scene where he's spanking her and she's crying, and then they essentially break up from that moment because she's just like, I can't. It wasn't rape because it was no penetration, but it's like sexual fucking assault for sure. Like, literally captured on video. And I remember watching that and just going like, Jesus Christ, like, is this what all the women are watching? Like, are they fantasizing about this? And I know that rape fantasies are a thing and sexual assault fantasies are a thing, but like, being in the moment would be very different to watching a rich billionaire guy in a movie. Like, anyway, the point is that 50 Shades of Grey, people have criticized it enough. I don't think we need to sit here and criticize it as well. But you're right that is kind of the most popular portrayal of BDSM is a woman who doesn't really want it.
Yeah, which is terrible.
Kind of just putting up with it because this guy has a lot of money and she's a virgin when she meets him, and she's kind of
he's hot and it's
he's attractive. Yeah. So a key principle of BDSM is consent, and making sure that everyone knows what's going to happen or has some idea, making sure that you have safe words, which if you don't know what a safe word is just a word that she can say to get you to stop. It could be stop.
It can be stop.
It could be like, can we pause? Like,
but the reason that it is a word is because if
easier.
and also if you are kind of having a like consensual non-consent type role play, often stop doesn't actually mean stop because you're playing into the fantasy where like you say stop but they keep going, and that's the fantasy that you talk about beforehand. So then you use like a completely separate word to portray what you actually are feeling.
But if you're inexperienced, I wouldn't play around with that. I would... The safe words that we have, I mean, we don't... Yeah, because the safe words that we have is you just say stop, or here's an even better safe word, wait. Because wait is easier to say as the submissive than stop. So this is a separate discussion on safe words. Maybe we can do a separate video on safe words. Sometimes a submissive person won't feel super confident stopping everything because they're like, well, I just want to slow down. Like, I'm not ready to stop it. It's getting a little intense, or I just want to pause for a little bit. So I don't want to stop it, and I'd feel bad if I said the safe word. So that's why you can have a soft safe word.
Yeah, so, people, I think I've heard of like the traffic light system. Like green is go, yellow is like, let's slow down or pause this, and red is like a hard stop.
Yeah. And the yellow or the orange to slow down, the word that we would recommend is just saying wait. Like, wait a second, wait. And then you'll go, what's up? And you go, I just want to catch my breath. Like, can we just try something else? Can we just cuddle for a little bit? Yeah, can we chill for a little bit? Or I need to go to the bathroom or...
Yeah, but it's funny that BDSM is tied up with non-consent when it's probably something you have to talk about like way, way more than normal sex. Because normal sex, for the most part, it's like as long as you're both like, yeah, we're into each other, we want to have sex. You don't really talk about it. You don't have to be like...
You don't have safe words in normal sex. I would actually say BDSM, if done the way that we advocate, is safer than vanilla sex.
Yeah, and requires a lot more consent and communication and talking about
and knowing
things.
What you're going to do.
Yeah, because of the nature of it, because you are more vulnerable, because you are kind of exploring those dominant submissive dynamics, you have to talk about it more, and inherently means there is a higher level of consent, if you could call it that.
Yeah, for sure. The next misconception is that if you're in the submissive position, You don't really want to be there. You're kind of forced there. You're just putting up with it. You think you don't deserve any better. It's abuse. It's toxic. It's bad for you. You don't get what you want. The other person is controlling you. Like all
Yeah,
of those
that
kind
the
of
other person can
misconceptions.
do whatever they want to you.
And you just have to put up with it.
Yeah, which is absolutely not true at all. And as you said earlier, I think submissives often have more power because they are the one that ultimately gets to say like yes or no.
Yeah.
And that is power, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things you can say if you're getting into BDSM and maybe you're the dominant person is you can just keep asking during it, like, are you having fun? Like, how does that feel? Is this good? Do you want it harder? Do you want it softer? You just basically talk during it. And one of the things that we say to pretty much every submissive woman that we're with, and we say this sometimes during sex or we'll say it outside of the bedroom, we'll say it's only fun for me or it's only fun for us if you're also having fun. I've said that to like hundreds of women at this point. I've said that so many fucking times over the last like 5 years. It's my favorite catchphrase. Like, it's only fun if you're having fun. Because I've had quite a few women who are, when I'm about to go into the bedroom with them, they're hesitant and they're nervous and they're scared. You were even scared. You asked me for reassurance a couple of times before the first time we had sex. Remember?
Kind of.
Please tell me you're not a serial killer.
Sure, that was more about having casual sex than it was about BDSM. But yes.
But the point is that people are or can be nervous about this shit. And so like I said, my favorite catchphrase is it's only fun if you're having fun. We also tell, and this is something I recommend for any of you that are getting into this stuff, we tell every woman that we date to write a big sexual bucket list of all the things that she wants to try. Like all the fantasies she might have in her head, anything she's seen in porn that she's curious about, like different sex positions, different kinks, different role plays, like different toys, whatever it might be that she's into. Just write it all down on a piece of paper, and then we will explore that with them. And that's something I recommend all of you do. And you can write your own bucket list, and then you bring your bucket list and her bucket list together, and you see like where the overlaps are. And so essentially what we're saying here is we're literally getting, or the submissives are getting to ask for what they want. They're saying, this is everything I want to do. Can we do this? And you're like, yes, that sounds fun. Let's do all that shit. So submissives have a lot more, I don't like the word power, but a lot more agency than sometimes people have in their misconceptions.
Yeah. And obviously the DOMs can still have a lot of power. It's not as if everything is 100% in the submissive's hands and they get to direct everything. The more dominant person can come to the submissive and be like, this is what I'm into. Would you like to try these things? It is, as you've said before, a bit like a dance. There's a lot of trust and everything goes two ways.
Yeah, it's a reciprocal relationship. And a lot of people look at BDSM. Maybe this is another one we could have written down. People have a misconception that BDSM is only about power or that one person has to lose and one person has to win. That is just never how we've done BDSM. I've always wanted, and I've said this a million times, have the intention of I want to be better off after each play session and I want you to be better off. So that way we both win.
And I don't think it's just us. I think inherently, if you're doing BDSM, I don't like saying it, but correctly, both parties want this. Yeah. They're both having fun. They're both choosing to be in these roles because they enjoy it. Yeah. Ultimately, this is about getting sexual pleasure out of what you're doing, not sacrificing your own wants and needs for the pleasure of somebody else. You're both engaging in whatever role you're engaging in because you enjoy it and because that feels good to you.
Yeah, think of it like a beautiful like yin-yang kind of connection where one person wants to be submissive, one person wants to be dominant, or maybe you both switch. But essentially there's up two roles and you're both slotting into those roles so that you can have a reciprocal relationship where you both benefit. Like that's kind of the point. It's not one person taking from the other person. It's not one person winning and the other one losing. And if you have that mindset, people who have that outside of BDSM too. They will look at money and say, oh, if you're getting money from someone, you must have stolen that from them. Instead of realizing like money is a reciprocal, loving relationship where I give you value, you give me money. They'll also look at friendships like that. They'll say, this person is using me. Everybody's using me. And so none of this is to judge. If you're in that mindset where you look at BDSM or sex or money or friendships or the workplace, so many people look at the workplace as like, my boss is winning and my boss is screwing me over. It's like, motherfucker, your boss is paying your rent. Cunt. Be a little bit more appreciative. That was very harsh of me, but be a little bit more appreciative. Your boss is giving you something. Don't be a fucking dick and say that your boss is giving you nothing. So if you're in that mindset, that's okay. You can like work through that. But I would sit there and really go deep on that and say, like, is it true that one person has to win? Is it possible that two people could win in any kind of relationship or in a deal, in a business deal, in a contract? Could two people benefit? Is it possible that we could both want the same thing or we could both be on the same team? And BDSM is definitely a really good example of, and the way that we do it is like having both people be on the same team. And the next misconception is my coaching clients have this where they're like, I would love to do BDSM, but I'm just not good enough. I'm not alpha enough. I'm not dominant enough. I'm not masculine enough. I'm not experienced enough. I'm not cool enough. I'm not attractive enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm not old enough. There are just so many excuses, and lots of women do too. They're like, only certain types of girls could do that. I'm just not confident enough to do that. I couldn't do that stuff.
Yeah, and to be clear, this is the distinction from like, I'm not interested in that.
Yeah, if you're not into it, don't fucking do BDSM. Like, why would you be watching this video? Maybe you're mildly curious about it, but we would never encourage someone to do it if they're not interested in it.
Yeah, it's about like giving yourself permission or feeling deserving or like the sort of person that's able to engage in BDSM.
Yeah, and you can start super slow with this stuff. If you're inexperienced or nervous or whatever, just start with some blindfolds, maybe a vibrator. Just do light BDSM, like blindfold your partner and maybe tie them up a little bit. And then just have gentle sex. Like, that's probably the easiest way of doing BDSM, is tie someone up and blindfold them and then just have normal sex, but go a little bit slower than you normally would.
Yeah.
That's it. That will be the most mind-blowing sex of that person's life, and yours too, because it's really fun being the partner who's like the dominant. You can also do tantric sex, which, you guys can do your own research, or we can do a video on that if you guys are interested.
Mm-hmm.
But it's essentially just really slow, sensual sex where you're like deeply exploring the other person's body and just going really slow, with maybe some music in the background, some candles. It's the best way I can explain tantric sex. It's so unbelievably close to BDSM, especially if you involve a blindfold or ropes or something. That, at that point, there's so much overlap, that's essentially BDSM. So don't feel like you have to be that type of person. This applies to both the dominant and the submissive. You can try some of this stuff. Just start slow. The second last misconception. Can't keep this. They're like almost a sex addict. They're just overly sexual.
Yeah, and I think sometimes there's a stereotype of like, it's the lifestyle, and so you always have to be in this role, and
you're
all
constantly horny,
always having sex. And I think
dominant.
with like a lot of porn and erotica, or like even 50 Shades of Grey, it's like they're always having sex. Life is about sex, and if you're like into BDSM, that's all you do. It's like your main thing is just like, we have sex a lot. We have BDSM sex all the time.
We've had people comment, and maybe you know who I'm talking about, recently, that like, oh, we're essentially, you and I are essentially like perverted because that's most of what's on, or that's a chunk of what's on my YouTube channel. There's sort of a misconception that like, if you even are into BDSM, that must be all you do. And it doesn't matter if 50% of, it's more than that, God, if 50% of my channel is about mindset and peace and love and self-improvement and goals, it's like, as soon as people see that you're into BDSM, there can be a misconception that like, oh, you guys must walk around with her on a collar and leash all day, and you guys must just have sex in elevators and sex. I even had a client, and if he watches this, he's going to know who I'm talking about. I'm not shouting him out, but basically we did a closing call for him to sign up for the coaching, and at the end of it, he goes, so how many times did you have sex this week? And I was like, mate, my life isn't like what you think it is. I'm not just like having sex all week. Like, I got shit to do. I got like business to run. I got coaching clients. So, and nothing against that guy, but there is a misconception with anyone that's into BDSM that all they must do is BDSM and their entire life must revolve around BDSM and that everything they do must be sexual. And we've had this conversation before. Lots of people are into BDSM and it's less sexual, especially if you do it in like a professional setting like shibari, which is rope bondage where you like tie a woman up. Most of that is not sexual. Like, you can literally go to places where they will tie you up, you pay them and they will tie you up. It's not sexual. They literally say, we're not going to touch you. Like, this is not an escort service. This is more about like submitting and almost like a meditative thing, almost like you're getting a massage.
Part of it, I think, is also like the art of the process. And obviously a lot of this is because you get horny as a result, but it doesn't mean that you then have sex.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of it can be the foreplay, and then sometimes it's not even sexual at all, and you just enjoy, as you said, like a massage, the experience of what it is that you're doing without any sexuality tied to it.
Yeah, for sure.
And we even slept with a girl who would do shibari and have people tie her up with partners who she wasn't sexually attracted to, but she enjoyed the act of the shibari, and
Yeah,
so would engage in
I
that.
don't even think she had sex with them.
No, and she didn't.
And she told us, like, in a very polite way, she was like, they're not attractive. They're like overweight old men, but I love being tied up by them. I love the dominant energy that they have. So it doesn't always have to be sexual.
Mm.
And the last misconception. Absolutely not true. There are some people that don't care about safety, sure. Like, there are people that will fucking stab you in the street if they want to, but the vast majority of people, I honestly think the BDSM community does a pretty damn good job of consent, of making sure everyone's having fun. I think more so than, like, let's say, like, people just having casual sex. Like, I would prefer to have BDSM sex, if we're talking about safety, compared to just going and having casual sex in a bar or a club or Tinder. Like, I would actually feel safer as a woman having BDSM sex, as long as I talk and do all the safety precautions and all of that.
I think because similarly, as we said, like the conversations about consent, this is very similar in the sense that because you are talking about everything so much and discussing what you are and are not okay with, it becomes a lot more controlled, and you're more aware of what the other person wants or doesn't want.
Yeah, for sure. And there's obviously things like safe words, having boundaries, having a sexual bucket list so you can talk about what you both want to try, so you know. Aftercare, which is really just cuddling and chilling after sex, just making sure you spend a bit of time hanging out in bed or going for a walk or whatever you want to do, but just chilling together after sex to kind of like debrief and say, how was that for you? Was there anything different you want to try next time? Do you feel good? Do you feel better now that you've done that than before? Like, did that actually benefit you in some way? Like, is your life slightly better now? Even if it's just, I had a lot of fun, that was amazing, cool. Like, are you better off?
And I totally get the concern. I think, at least from my perspective, the worry would be like, what if I'm choosing to submit to somebody, I'm tied up, so I literally can't move, I'm in a very helpless position, and then they don't stop when I ask them to stop. Like, I think that is the concern.
Which is why you build trust and you make sure you only do this with a partner that you trust.
Yeah, and someone that you've at least taken the time to get to know, you've seen what sort of person they are, and you can gauge what they're going to be like in the bedroom as well as outside of it.
And what we do in particular with girls that we date and sleep with is we go ridiculously slow, especially if they're nervous or they're just inexperienced. We go so fucking unbelievably slow. Like, and our favorite thing to do is we have a cupboard, like a wardrobe that has all of the BDSM toys. Our favorite thing to do is to just let them explore that. We'll open it up, we'll say, look, like, which of this stuff do you want to try? Like, go at your pace, you can look through it, and they'll look through and go, oh my God, look at all this stuff. And they'll pick something out, and they'll go, what is this? And we'll explain what it is. And then they'll go, can we try this? And we'll go, sure. Like, lay on the bed, let's try it now. You tell us how it feels. And so just going really fucking slow. And if you're talking about stuff like restraints, like ropes or handcuffs and stuff like that, if someone is nervous or inexperienced, I'd probably save most of the restraints. Like, because generally speaking, most submissive or most people will feel safer if they're not tied up. And so the first time that you play with someone, I maybe wouldn't tie them up. Unless they specifically say, like, I want to be tied up, I trust you, let's have fun. But I would, if they're nervous, I would go a little bit slower. I'd start with just a blindfold, maybe a vibrator or some toys. Maybe you can spank them a little bit, or you can talk dirty to them a little bit, or you can edge them, like get them close to the edge of orgasm, but then stop. You know, just play around with the teasing and the role play and stuff like that. And then slowly introduce things like ropes and whips and bondage and all the other cool stuff.
Yeah.
So go slow. Anything else to add, madam?
I do not think so.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like help with BDSM, I've coached so many guys with this stuff. I have like one guy in particular I can think of that did a video on my channel. He taught himself, or I helped him learn shibari, so rope bondage, and he got really into that. He did some photo shoots with a girl that he was seeing. Another guy I taught how to have threesomes and how to do BDSM in those threesomes. BDSM is something that a lot of the guys in the coaching program right now are interested in or are working on. So we would love to have you in the program. I will leave a link in the description to that. Click that button, fill out an inquiry form. We'll sit down, we'll talk about if coaching is good for you, and we will change your goddamn life. And as always, what do these people need to do?
To go out there and crush your goals.
Go out there and crush those goddamn goals, son.